You've survived another week. Thank you for listening, downloading, and supporting the Black Man with a Gun Show. This is your friend and your brother, Ken Blanchard, and I'm glad that you're back with me again. This week, we're going to keep it simple. Talk about hunting. Yeah, there's some good things about hunting, and maybe you should be thinking about it too. And the other big point, and the takeaway for this week, is training. Both Michael and I are going to remind you about the importance of training.
Hi, my name is Reverend Ken Blanchard, the guy known as the Black Man with a Gun, and this is the podcast of the African American gun community, amplifying our voices with American history, sharing training, news, and positive information for all America. Welcome to the show.
All right, if you want to be serious about shooting, you got to practice. And if you got to practice, I suggest you practice with one firearm, not 100. I know you got 4 in there, 3 that you love, 2 that you like to show on Instagram, but you need to be proficient with just one firearm. And what does that mean? That means you're going to practice with at least 300 to 500 rounds. Yeah, put the work in. Studies have shown that for the average person, ingraining a fine motor skill can take 300 to 500 repetitions. Marksmanship is no different. You got to put in the work to refine each movement. You don't stop until it's close to perfect as you can get it in that session. And then you keep working at it in later sessions. From your trigger squeeze to sight alignment to other techniques, repetition is the only way to get as close to perfection as you can. Another interesting finding is that relearning an old skill can take you anywhere from 3,000 to 5,000 repetitions to get back to your previous proficiency. You got to treat marksmanship like any other skill that you want to build or maintain. You only got 2 choices. Use it or lose it. Now let's talk about stand. Your shooting position forms the foundation of your shooting platform. If you're uncomfortable or unstable, it will affect your accuracy. Basically, there's two different ways to stand. For beginners, there's the isosceles or the weaver. If you don't remember geometry, an isosceles triangle has 2 equal sides. From a bird's eye view, the 2 equal sides are your arms, and your legs form the third side. This is probably one you're most familiar with. It's when your feet are planted flat on the ground, a little wider than shoulder width apart. Your knees should be slightly bent, and your upper body should be leaning slightly forward at the hips. While holding the pistol, your arms should be fully locked and pushed out towards your target. A lot of competition shooters exaggerate this a little, but you'll also find out that if you ever get involved in a stress situation, you'll be shooting from this position as well, because your body tends to crouch lower in the threat. If you go to a range, you can see a lot of improper stances for the isosceles, and that's when the knees are locked, the upper body is leaning way back, there's too much elbow bend, and the shooter's stability is greatly reduced by each one of these little errors. They're leaning back, they're looking improperly over the sights. You can see it from where you are if you're not shooting. You can help your range buddy if you let them know about it. New shooters often arch their backs away from the pistol because they're afraid of the noise, the recoil, and everything else. It's just natural. The correct stance will provide you with much more stability and control. And when you're stable and in control, you'll shoot better, of course, and you'll be more confident and more accurate. There's a weaver stance. It went really big after a California competition shooter by the name of John Weaver developed it. It's popular on television and movies. In the real world, it's used by law enforcement, military, and self-defense instructors. One of the primary benefits for the weaver stance is that your body is at an angle and you're reducing your profile, and therefore decreasing the chance that you'll be shot or hit if you're shot at. A proper weaver stance looks almost like boxing. Starts with the feet shoulder width apart. Your shooting side foot moves back about 8 to 10 inches so it forms an approximate 45-degree angle with your support foot. Think of how you would if you were boxing and you're up on your toes and you're moving left and right. Your support foot should point toward the target, and your shooting foot should point about 45 degrees away from your body. Now, there's variations on these two stances, but you can start with these two, the weaver and the isosceles, to do well. And whatever you do, practice that one. I know when you go to school, when you go to anybody's class, they're going to tell you which the best stance for you. The best stance for you is the one that works. In all respect to your teachers, make sure they're telling you that as well. There is no one way, but there is a safe way. All right, that's our tip for this week on shooting. And to prove to me that you listened to this podcast episode, could you send me an email to let me know that you're doing it, that you're training, that you're working on one gun, and which gun it is that you're using? That little conscious thing will let me know and let you know in your heart that you are true.
Is the cost of ammo bringing you down? Are you ready to have fun with your firearm again? If you need ammo, your friend and brother from a different mother has the answer. LuckyGunner.com. Good prices. LuckyGunner.com. If your time is valuable, LuckyGunner.com. Order your ammo today. LuckyGunner.com. Where you won't waste your time and the shipping is fast. It's 110% guaranteed. LuckyGunner.com.
All right, Michael, you're up next, brother.
Thank you, Ken, and welcome to another Tips and Review segment. I am Michael Woodland, and today we're going to discuss getting some training. For all those who are in the community who exercise their right to utilize firearms, can push the envelope to get more education with training. This is a topic where you have a lot of people who are closed-minded. Yes, we all heard the excuses of, I've been on the police force for over 15 years, or the military vet that served who's seen some action, but that alone is not justification for the what-if moment. With any form of training in society today, we are planning for the unknown, but even in the midst of doing such, there are a few bad apples who mess it up for the rest of us. There are many forms of training you can go out here and get, but just make sure the training reaches you to the point of understanding. For instance, because you have a concealed carry doesn't mean you're just going to go out here and whip out your firearm and start shooting anyone who does not support your view. Or because you have a safe full of AK-47s mean you have two with you in your vehicle when you're out grocery shopping. Training is a result of being responsible and, most importantly, safe. In my opinion, if you have a firearm on the different platforms, you should go out and practice with each one more than once a year. Do a web search for instructors in your area and get signed up for some training and blow the dust off the knowledge that was sitting dormant for so long. After you get some training completed, go out and compete in a few local matches, whether it is handgun, rifle, long range, two-gun, which is normally a handgun and an AR platform rifle, three-gun, which is normally a handgun, an AR platform rifle, and shotgun, and the list goes on. By doing so, you're also putting an association within your community, having fun, and doing some networking with others who have the same interests as you. Just remember, the same people who shoot at the local firearm clubs or matches are human, just like you. Earlier this week, I went out and competed in my first three-gun match. It was different, but an eye-opener for me to the point of I need to shoot my shotgun more often. Come to think of it, the last time I actually effectively ran my shotgun was at Fort Benning back in 2015 while doing some training with the Homeland Security. Here shortly, I will look up some courses to attend and sign up to knock the dust off some buried knowledge. For those who are looking to contact me, visit blackmanwithagun.com and under the Leaders tab, click on my name, Michael Woodland, and shoot me an email. Until next week, keep shooting, keep practicing, and have fun. Back to you, Ken.
Man, that's some good stuff right there. Knock the dust off, get some wisdom, get some good training. Everybody can improve. Thanks, Michael.
Get the book, Black Man with a Gun, Reloaded. The story of Reverend Kenn Blanchard.
A Marine Corps veteran, a former federal police officer,
a firearms trainer, former CIA officer, a published author, and now podcaster. I'm the founder of the 10th Cavalry Gun Club. I've lobbied and testified before the United States Congress, Texas, South Carolina, Wisconsin, Michigan, Virginia, and Maryland for an individual right of self-defense. And they call me the Black Man with a Gun. You can get the link on blackmanwithagun.com or on amazon.com. Black Man with a Gun, Reloaded. Get your copy today.
This week, I want to drop something into your spirit. Maybe you haven't thought about it in a long time, or maybe never. You're into firearms. You're into self-protection. You're in the defense of your family and your loved ones. You're thinking about the great apocalypse and what you're going to do when things go bad. Let's go a little deeper than that. Fall and winter are great times to get out and enjoy nature, what's outside, to see the wildlife. How about hunting? You can learn about animals and plants. You can be a part of nature in the natural world. If you live in the city, you're missing a lot. Hunting can give you skills and make you self-reliant. So if the grid goes down, if you have to actually survive for longer than a few days when the grocery stores are depleted, maybe you can actually feed your family. Hunting can give you exercise. It can help you relax and get away from that daily grind that we call normal. Hunting can help you explore wild places still left in the world, not necessarily in your city. And you can feel the excitement of the chase. It's inside you, way deep in there. You might even enjoy the taste of wild game meat. Hunting allows you to gather your own food, spend time with your family and your friends, and participate in family and community traditions. Don't have any traditions? Maybe it's time to start your own. Believe it or not, Black people hunt. If the African American population comprises of only 12.6% of the country, statistically only 2% hunt. This might be a niche of a niche, but one that, if I follow the numbers, contains 778,586 people in it. Now, to me, that's still a lot of people and the potential for the shooting, hunting, and outdoor trade market to make some money. African American people have been hunting for food in the South, I know for sure, all my life and since before the Civil War. It's more of a sport today. Before that, it was survival. Many men had to poach game to feed their families in a time when gun ownership was at its worst. And it was illegal for a person of color, if they didn't own the land, to hunt on. Today, it still comes down to land. One of the reasons for the lack of hunters of color, aside from culture, is the land issue. Hunting is still a family thing. All the Black hunters I know do so on privately owned land that has been in their families for generations. The cultural piece is that nobody's teaching the young people how to hunt. And most hunter classes are only given maybe twice a year, not advertised as best it could, and nobody's talking about it. So I thought I'd talk about it right now. When the leaves start falling off the trees here in the East Coast and the weather gets a little colder, I start thinking about the hunting that happened when I was a kid. Watching the hunters walk through my grandmother's property, asking permission from Miss Mary if they could hunt on her land, and always asking and promising to bring her back something, which they always did, to help feed the family. While that shouldn't matter, and while that's really cool, these hunters are white. I just wanted to say that. There are different kinds of hunting. In the U.S., there's bow hunting, there's black powder, there's shotgun only, there's rifle. There's hunting using decoys and hunting where you track and hunting using blinds and hides. There's small game hunting like pheasant and quail and dove and squirrel and rabbit. There's large game like deer, elk, antelope, bighorn sheep. There's the hunting of game birds, the hunting of waterfowl like duck and geese. There's even the hunting of varmints and vermin. You know, weasels, raccoons, rats, feral dogs, groundhogs, muskrats, prairie dogs, stuff like that. And if everybody agreed, we'd all be in a different boat, but we don't. There are a lot of people who don't approve of hunting. There are organizations like PETA, the People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, that condemn the practice altogether. And you might be one of those until that deer jumps in front of your car and takes your Jaguar out and almost kills you. Did you start thinking, somebody should be shooting these things? Yeah. Hunting. It's an important management tool. For many species, it helps maintain populations at level compatible with human activity, land use, and available habitat. Hunting helps limit deer browse in agricultural areas and deer-car collisions, actually. Hunting may also keep your garden from getting eaten up by deer. Hunting is good for the environment because the hunting community ensures that wildlife populations of game species are sustainable from one generation to the next. Now, to do that requires that the diversity of natural habitats be kept intact, unpolluted, and undisturbed. Hunters are the ones who support all these efforts. The taxes, the money from hunting activities go to the states or to the federal government for such purposes as enhancing wildlife habitat, managing and maintaining parks and wildlife refuges, and conducting surveys and research to determine the status of not only game, but also non-game species. Hunters contribute in a big way to benefiting natural environments. Everybody has their own interests, right? But when's the last time you've been a part of the environment? Yeah, I know. Hikers want trails, bird watchers want a diversity of quiet habitats, and hunters want land management that favors their favorite game, bird, or mammal. Also, hunters and other groups don't like to share that same habitat at the same time, but partnerships have started. They partner with ecologists, groups interested in wildlife recreation, and organizations that focus on habitat protection. Now, although everybody's objectives differ, the primary goal of saving and restoring forests and other national habitats benefits all of us. Hunters depend on and help maintain sustainable populations of their species of interest. Unfortunately, it's the hunter population that's declining. Let's talk numbers. Hunting has major value for highway safety. For every deer hit by a motorist, hunters take 6. Point number 2. Hunting supports at least 600,000 jobs, from game wardens, waitresses, biologists, to motel clerks. Hunters help manage growing numbers of predators such as cougars, bears, coyotes, and wolves. Our government spends millions to control predators and varmints, while hunters have proven more than willing to pay for that opportunity. And my final point, more people hunt each year than play soccer, tennis, or baseball. So, even though it might be too late for this season, you got a year to get prepared for next. Think about it, contemplate it, find out where you can get some training, and get outside. Facebook has a few groups. Check them out. Find somebody that you can talk to and learn from a friend, a brother, or a sister. That's how we do things. I got some throwback audio from the Urban Shooter podcast about hunting that I want to share with you now. It's just still relevant.
As all of us go through summer, the distractions are many. Work, hobbies, special friends, family. The weather begins its annual change. A leaf or two will begin to turn color, maybe even drop. The nights are cooler. Kids go back to school. College football kicks off. Soon the weather is occasionally cold. Before you know it, one of your buddies says, "Hey, we need to be thinking about prepping for hunting season." Though I enjoy many types of hunting, grouse and rabbit among them, and I'm going to get into goose hunting, this particular call was for something that takes a bit more preparation. Deer season. Here in Ohio, our bow season for deer runs from October through February. I'm not a bow hunter. I take part in the gun hunt on 1 week season starting the Monday after Thanksgiving. Recently, the Ohio Division of Wildlife has added a bonus weekend in mid-December to enable more hunters to get into the field and harvest the overabundance of deer here in the Buckeye State. If most motorists had their choice, deer would be eradicated. I know the insurance industry would like that. I hope it never happens. For me, I just want to put meat in the freezer and enjoy the experience of being away from the city. But first, there's work to do. couple of weeks ago, most of the members of my hunting group spent the day putting up stands and prepping the area. We built 3 ground blinds using natural materials from the area. V-shaped hides, stacked like split rail fencing, looking down upon 3 areas that have been good to us in past years. In other areas, we put up wedges, lengths of 2x8 wood boards in the crotches of favorite trees that overlook busy deer trails. This is the second trip to the site this season. I was unable to make the first. On the first visit, the guys checked out a little lake we built early last year. Less a lake, it's not even a pond. It's more of a watering hole we created in a wet area that gets a regular trickle runoff from a hill headed down toward a deep ravine. The intent was to create a place for deer to stop for a drink that is closer to where we hunt, instead of climbing down the gully toward the creek far below. It has been a success. Both last year and this, there is evidence by way of hoof prints and scat that the deer are using the new watering hole. This will be good for our hunt. During our inspection of the grounds, it was found that most of the productive areas of the property fared well, but one area lost an important tree a few months ago. When the remnants of Hurricane Ike blew through Ohio some time back, the wind toppled a giant cherry tree, pushed it right over to the point where the root ball is now high in the air. That cherry tree was what we called the saddle stand, and my hunting colleague who used that stand regularly is not a happy camper. As a replacement, we put up a tree stand near the site so we'll still have access to the area. My buddy climbed the new stand to test the view once it was all secure. He noted that he feels far more exposed there than he did when enveloped in the crotch of a large tree. He may be right. We'll see how it works out. For the past several years, this ground has been good to our little group, all of us from Columbus driving some 90 minutes in the early hours to northern Licking County, near the little town of Danville. The spot is an 80-acre property that was, until about 20 years ago, a Christmas tree farm. It now has meadows, mature hardwoods, and many grown tall fir trees, and lots of the edge that deer love. I've taken at least one deer out of here each of the past 3 years. With our ground prep done, we also spent some time policing the area. Responsible hunters are stewards of the property upon which they hunt. We help out the owners of this ground by cleaning up waste that others drop in, like plastic bottles, and on this particular weekend, a waterlogged chaise lounge mattress that someone had dumped there. On our way out, I spotted some orange in the grass along the logging road we were traveling. Getting out of the truck, I found that a bow hunter, field-dressed deer, and next to the gut pile had left his rubber gloves and plastic orange sleeve protectors. Trash. Now this ticks me off because we are all guests here. The owners of the property live out of state. Should they become annoyed by the bad habits of one hunting group, every one of us may be sent packing and asked not to return. So I pick up the trash of a careless hunter for the benefit of everyone. We may make one more return trip if needed to put up another stand or two, but for now, we're pretty much ready. The next time I have a report, in about a week, I'll talk about readying oneself physically and making sure your hunting equipment and your permits are all in order. This is Brent Greer reporting from the Ready Line.
Now, I've been podcasting for so long that Brent now lives in Florida and is a real estate agent. But that's still good tips for today, right?
This portion of the show is sponsored by CrossbreedHolsters.com. Crossbreed Holsters has gained national recognition as a maker of the best and most functional concealment holsters available on the market today. Each holster is handcrafted to ensure your firearm is safe and secure while carrying, combined with the best customer service in the industry. Visit CrossbreedHolsters.com.
This week in history, I want to take you back to a strange portion of time, which has some similarities to now. This is a really volatile time in our culture and our country, where people are sensitive and unknowing about their history. We're doing just plain old stupid and ignorant things. We're going back to 1850 right now, to the Fugitive Slave Law, where it gave black people new things to worry about. With the government, agents, and even civilians pressed into the aid of slave catchers, this fugitive slave law amplified the threat, both practically and symbolically, and black people responded. Think about the movie 12 Years a Slave, and it puts you in a frame of mind for where I'm going right now. When a black man was apprehended in New York and taken back to his owner in the South, the community reacted by, quote, arming to the teeth and forming mutual aid committees against further incidents. The new fugitive law also escalated the war of rhetoric. Hyperbolic abolitionists warned that even white people were at risk. One radical pamphleteer argued there are in the South already slaves as white as any of us, who have in our veins the purest Saxon blood. The whiter the slave, especially if it's a female, the more extravagant the price, the more desirable the victim, end quote. There was actually a flash of this New Albany, Indiana, where an apparently white woman, her daughter and her grandson were handed over to an Arkansas slaver whose claim satisfied the legal formalities, and this type of incident seemed rare. More common were the objection of northern whites that the new law dragooned them as slaves into the man-hunting business. The Fugitive Slave Law also chased some blacks further north into Canada. In 1850, a body of about 150 fugitives fled Pennsylvania, determined to fight anyone who stood in their way. According to one sympathetic report, many are armed and resolved to be free at all hazard. An attempt to arrest them would be no child's play. The pressure of the 1850 law also pushed more blacks to advocate political violence. In Chicago, a group of 300 assembled to endorse a pact of mutual self-protection against stalking slavers. Their preamble expressed a preference to avoid violence, but the operative provisions promised that no matter what the law said, if driven to the extreme, these Negroes would defend themselves at all hazards. In Ohio, a similar meeting produced the resolution that, quote, all colored people go continually prepared that they may be ready at any moment to offer defense in behalf of their liberty, end quote. Now, this reference is going prepared does not explicitly mention firearms, but in Philadelphia, the articulated resolve of a similar group followed an abduction of a well-known member of the community. It was plain. They advised the colored race to arm themselves and shoot down officers of the law, complicit in the capture of fugitives from bondage. Sounds like black people against the law. You could almost put a cop killer video in this one. But this is the culture that's deep-seated in our country that folks kind of forget. There's always been an issue with law enforcement, with race, with guns, misunderstanding, illegal activity, and money. Some of the most explicit advocacy of political violence came from interracial gatherings of anti-slavery groups. In December of 1850, short months after the new statute was passed, Robert Purvis, a black conductor of the Underground Railroad, spoke candidly to the Pennsylvania Anti-Slavery Society. Black men, said Purvis, had a responsibility to arm themselves. We're talking December of 1850 now. Purvis argued that by standing up with arms and defending themselves, blacks would show that the world that they were men and not worthy of slavery. Some in the audience were avowed pacifists. Remember, this is Pennsylvania. And urged Purvis to follow the example of Christ. Purvis's answer was earnestly practical. He said, what can I do when my family are assaulted by kidnappers? I would fly and by every means endeavor to avoid it. But when the extremity comes, I welcome death rather than slavery. And by what means God and nature has given me, I will defend myself and my family. In strongholds of aggressive abolitionism, the press openly urged fugitive slaves, arm yourself at once. If the catcher comes, receive him with powder and ball, with dirk or bowie knife, and whatever weapon may be most convenient. Do not hesitate to slay the miscreant if he comes to reslave you, your wife, or your child. Radical abolitionist Joshua Giddings went further, claiming that blacks would not fight alone, that the white people of northern Ohio would engage in warfare to resist slave catchers and their federal government enforcers. As the rhetorical war escalated, armed resistance continued apace. In 1850, in Lawrence County, Ohio, 6, quote, well-armed fugitives fired on a group of Kentucky slave catchers. Like many of these incidents, once the single-shot firearms were spent, the Negroes descended on their pursuers with clubs, leaving them for dead and then escaping into the forest. There was continued confirmation during this period that the results of violent resistance could vary dramatically. Pursued by slavers over the border into Indiana in 1853, a group of 10 fugitives resisted with gunfire, but were overcome by better armed whites. With 2 slaves and 1 slaver wounded, the blacks were apprehended and carted back to an unrecorded fate. Under the new fugitive slave law, hunters of human property could now demand the assistance of United States Marshals, but this federal authority made it little difference to blacks fighting for their lives. A willingness to defy the federal government and fight the Marshals, too, is evident in 1850 in Coatesville, Pennsylvania, where a free black couple opened fire on a marshal and posse who were pursuing a fugitive in their care. Their firearms spent, a free man and his wife commenced fighting with axes, giving the fugitive cover to the escape. Later, they displayed wounds from the fight as badges of honor. A similar incident occurred in 1856 when Robert Garner, his wife, and their 4 children and 2 other adults fled out of Kentucky to Cincinnati. They were resting at the home of a free black man by the name of Elijah Kite when their Kentucky masters and a United States Marshal broke through the door. Both Kite and Garner responded with pistol fire, wounding one of the intruders. The violence then took a horrific turn. Garner's wife was the spark. Seeing that the men might lose the fight, Margaret Garner shouted that she would kill her children before returning them to slavery. By the time the slavers and their government accomplice gained control, Margaret had strangled the life from her 2-year-old daughter. Wow. For Northerners, Margaret Garner's infanticide underscored the evils of slavery. Southerners said it was just another example of the baffling Negro and confirmation of his inferior status in law and nature. After extended legal squabbling, the Garners were given up to their masters who sold them to slave traders in New Orleans. Another U.S. Marshal was a target of gunplay when an interracial group in the abolitionist bastion of Oberlin, Ohio, blocked the pursuit of Kentucky fugitive John Price. When the posse of slave catchers and their federal man brought the fight, the resistors brandished guns to a temporary stalemate. The aftermath reflected the simmering conflict between federal law and technically preempted state statutes that deemed slave catchers kidnappers. State and federal bureaucracies initiated disparate proceedings. The federal process charged the resistors with violating the fugitive slave law. Ohio, on the other hand, indicted the marshal and 3 Southerners for kidnapping. The conflict eventually was settled and with reduced sanctions against combatants on both sides. While Negro life in free states and territories were certainly an improvement over slavery, these places fell far short of the promised land. Opposition to slavery did not necessarily mean full political and social embrace of Negroes. This is evident in various free state laws restricting Negro rights. Ohio's early constitution denied free blacks the right to vote, and in 1807 the state passed a loosely enforced law requiring Negro immigrants to post a $500 bond and a guarantee of their good behavior signed by 2 white men. The Indiana Territory prohibited Negroes from testifying in court against whites. In 1857, Wisconsin voters reversed a previous statute granting black suffrages. In 1857, Oregon statute prohibited blacks from settling in the state. Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, and Iowa all prohibited interracial marriage. It was the violation of one of those interracial marriage bans in 1845 that sent Rose Ann McGregor of Marion County, Iowa, running for her gun. Rose Ann had the temerity to fall in love with a white man, Tom McGregor, and he with her. They beat the first prosecution by violating the ban by getting the proceedings moved to a Quaker community where a sympathetic grand jury refused to indict them. Officials then ordered Rose Ann McGregor either to post manumission papers or a $500 bond or be sold to the highest bidder. The McGregors were defiant and vowed to do neither. While Tom was away, the sheriff and a deputy came out to arrest Rose Ann. She saw them approaching and warned that she was armed and was a crack shot. It was one of those instances where just a threat of gunfire seemed to be enough, at least until nightfall. Under the cover of darkness, the sheriff sneaked to the door, kicked it down, and seized Rose Ann McGregor before she could get a shot off. Rose Ann was captured, but not for long. As they trotted back to town, with Rose Ann bound up on a horseback, she kicked her mount hard on the ribs and held on as the animal bolted off into the night. She soon met up with Tom, and they abandoned their Iowa home in search for a more welcoming environment. Interracial marriage. Struggles with the law. Black people against the government. Guns saving lives and not having to shoot anybody. People choosing to die rather than be served as slaves. This is some of the history that has been forgotten. I got all of that from Negroes and the Gun, The Black Tradition of Arms by my friend Nicholas Johnson. History is still important because it shows the ignorance of our past in the present. Slavery ended officially in December 18th, 1865, but left a hole in the soul of America. We have come through so many things, and folks don't realize how blessed we are. We live in a great nation. The problems that we have, we've always had. It didn't just get created recently. Folks need to truly wake up and appreciate what freedom is.
Hey, thinking about suicide? I'm here to tell you that you're not alone. If you need some help in the U.S., please call 1-800-273-8255. That's the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. SuicidePreventionLifeline.org. 1-800-273-8255. You are not alone.
A few years ago, a friend of mine started this thing called the United States Concealed Carry Association. It's an education, training, and self-defense insurance company now. It's for responsible gun owners. You can get complete peace of mind when you join USCCA today. If you carry a gun for self-defense, you need this. It's a whole package: education, training, and self-defense insurance. Call my friend. The number is 1-877-488-8353. And if you missed that, go to the link at blackmanwithagun.com for USCCA. All right, I think that's it for this week. I want to thank you for listening, downloading, and supporting the Black Man with a Gun show. Thank you for being a part of my life. I want to thank a quick shout out to all those who are supporting me on Patreon. I couldn't have kept it this long without you. Thank you for those who are checking out the new Black Man with a Gun app. You guys are clicking on that thing every day, and the numbers are growing. It's amazing. I'm hoping that you take some advice today that you heard here and practice a little bit, like the 300 and 500 round practice kind of type of thing, and maybe even get into hunting. Also, consider the sources and your motivations when folks are trying to stir you up. There's a lot more important things in the world than what you hear sometimes. Don't waste and blow the time you have in your life. It's not that long. And you can do a lot better things than maybe you are. Just some things to think about. Just in case nobody has told you this today, I love you. And there's not a damn thing you can do about it. Consider checking out my newest podcast, Speak Life, and there'll be a little ad for it after the show. Until next week, shalom, baby.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Do you want a new podcast to listen to? Check out my new one. It's called Speak Life. It's a must listen for every man and woman who wears a badge, owns a gun, hunts, or believes that freedom is life's first right. Speak Life
podcast is going to give you what you missed, make you smarter, give you less stress, less fear, and more faith in God. The same God folks are trying hard to trivialize, marginalize, and misunderstand. Speak Life Podcast, now available on iTunes.